Are we now at an inflection point?
I think that Glasgow COP26 is a turning point for the world, and it's the moment when we have to grow up and take our responsibilities. I think we go through a period of glorious indifference about the world. We've been through that. We've been through our childhood, if you like. We now got to realise that this is a problem that requires grip, and there are changes we're going to have to make. But people should be optimistic, because we can make these changes whilst encouraging the creation of literally millions of high-wage, high-skill jobs. We need to move from old hydrocarbon technology into new, clean, green technology, and that is fantastically promising. And as you can see with the current problems with some of the hydrocarbon shortages in around the world caused by the resurgence of the global economy, we need more than ever to move to security of supply for clean, green sources of energy.
Prime Minister, on the 100 billion climate fund, you said last night that you had a 6 out of 10 chance of delivering this before COP in November.
Yes.
But this morning, President Biden's special climate envoy, John Kerry, said, and I'll quote him, "I think we're going to get this done." And he told us to stay tuned for the President's speech. So what are your odds now? 9 out of 10? 10 out of 10?
Beth, well, I congratulate you on following the story as closely as you are, and you're right. But I think that we've been here before. We've all heard lots of pledges, lots of positive noises. Let's see where we get to. We're not counting our chickens here, Beth. We're not counting our chickens. We want to see where we get to. We've made a lot of progress in Carbis Bay. The numbers are increasing at the G7 summit in Carbis Bay. The numbers are increasing. We heard some promising commitments from our friends in Sweden, in Denmark, Italy, and others, the EU. But the United States is crucially important.
President Biden adds more funds, isn't it?
It will make a huge difference, and I think it will send a massively powerful signal to the world, the developing countries that I've just been talking about, that we in the industrialized West really do take it seriously, and we really are willing to step up to the plate and help them. But what you also heard from those countries is a desire for concrete programs to help them with the green technology, and that we've also got to do.
On the travel ban, great news that UK citizens will be able to come to the US if they're double vaxxed. But on the way over to the US, and I'll quote you directly, you said, "I have to warn you, I don't think we're necessarily going to crack it this week." Again, as on the timing of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it seems like you've been caught out by a president acting unilaterally.
Well, actually, I think what most fair-minded people would say, Beth, is that we've made a lot of progress on getting people to double vaccinated people to be allowed to travel to the United States. They'll be able to get there by Thanksgiving. That's a great thing. I thank everybody in our joint working group, the US-UK joint working group, who've been hard at it. And I thank the President for the progress that we've been able to make. Yes, we have done it faster than we expected, but that's thanks to the hard work of our teams. I also think it's thanks to the high levels of vaccination that there are in the United Kingdom, and the very reassuring levels of immunity that there are now in the United Kingdom. It's not perfect, and I could just seize this opportunity, by your leave, Beth, just to remind everybody that the 5 million who still have not been vaccinated, there's no time like the present. Go get your jab. You won't regret it.
Thank you. Prime Minister, with the gas supply crisis, people back home are terrified about the energy prices going up. But if you're maintaining the price cap, how are you going to prevent energy businesses from going under? What concrete steps will the government take to prevent firms collapsing, or are you going to leave it to the market?
Thanks very much. I think you really need to listen to what Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, has to say. He's working flat out with the energy companies, doing everything we can to help them. Clearly their business model has been badly affected when the wholesale price massively increases, spikes in this way, and they have loads of customers on fixed retail prices. Then it's very difficult. But we're working very hard to find a way through, also to try to keep a steady supply of gas. But I want to repeat what I said yesterday. What you're basically seeing is it's like when there's been a serious frost in your house and all the pipes are frozen, then the big thaw comes, and that's when you have the problems and the leaks and all the difficulties, and that's really what's happening to the global economy. It's unthawing very rapidly. It's unfreezing very rapidly, I should say. It's thawing very rapidly, and you're seeing problems in the supply chains. Very strong demand for gas around the world is producing this phenomenon, but we're going to fix it.
Thanks. And you said the UK's relationship with France is indestructible, but now Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has been snubbed by his French counterpart, Florence Parly. Isn't it true that the new AUKUS pact has caused real damage to relationships with France, and how are you going to patch things up with Paris?
I just repeat what I said to everybody yesterday. Our relationship with France is incredibly important. It is historic. It goes back a long time, and it is founded on shared values, a shared belief in democracy. We work together around the world. The UK and France are shoulder to shoulder in the Sahel. Fighting terrorism in the Sahel. We're shoulder to shoulder in the Baltic states, in NATO's largest current mission. And it's an extraordinary fact. There is one other country in the world with whom we share a program to do simulated nuclear testing. Which country is that? It's France. The UK and France have, I believe, a very, very important and indestructible relationship. And of course, we'll be talking to all our friends about how to make the AUKUS pact work so that it's not exclusionary, it's not divisive, and it really doesn't have to be that way. This is just a way of the UK, the US, and Australia sharing certain technologies because that is the sensible thing to do in the world in which we find ourselves. But that does not in any way mean that we wish to be adversarial towards anybody else or exclusive or crowding anybody else out. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes, yes.
What do you say to the developing world when you ask them about coal? Funding is one thing, but to ask them to cut coal when countries like the United States and the United Kingdom built their economies on fossil fuels, how do you convince them to do that? And China technically is still considered developing world here at the UN. What's your message to them, and do you feel like it's what's their response?
You can do it, is what I say. I mean, first of all, I accept your premise that, we're the guys who created the problem, and the Industrial Revolution started in more or less in our country, in the iron and coal fields of the Midlands and elsewhere. That's where it began. And ever since then, for 250 years or more, we've been pumping this stuff out. And so, of course, I understand the feelings of injustice in the developing world and the passionate appeals we just heard from Costa Rica, the Maldives, and other countries just now. But what I say to them is, yes, that's why we've got to get the funding to help you to make the progress that you need, and that's why the $100 billion is so important. And if Beth is right, then let's hope there's progress. We'll watch it very carefully. But the second thing is that you can do it. You can transit away from coal. And the UK itself, I think, in 2012, 40% of our power came from coal. It's now less than 1%. When I was a kid, it was 70%. And that's partly because of gas, but it's mainly because of the arrival of clean, green renewables on a scale that we never dreamt possible. And it's bringing that imagination to bear on the problem that I think will make all the difference.
Prime Minister,
okay.
What do you make of their plan to swap their debt, vulnerable countries swapping their debt to climate-resilient projects?
I thought that was the proposal from Colombia and others. I thought that was an extremely interesting proposal. I think that the MDBs need to look at that, and what I think we need to do is we need the MDBs and the developed nations to focus on the individual requirements of the countries that are making the transition, and to work out how by concrete financing means we can leverage in the private sector, leverage in investment in clean green technology, because that is going to make the difference. The MDBs, development aid, all that on its own is not going to fix this. It's got to be the private sector that comes in as well, and that's what I think we should be focusing on. Thank you, everybody. I'd love to talk to stay all afternoon, but I've got to go. Thank you.
Good work getting across.
Oh, do you want the sanction for the SG?
We're going to leave it for when the SG comes.
What's that?
Yeah, we'll leave it when the SG comes. Do not think so. Do not. No problem.
Podium kick to the left. You want it?
Tell us when it's going to sworn in.
Go. That one a little more. Keep going. That's it. Thank you, Bill. You look marvelous.
One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You good, Benji? Two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You good? Ready, Benji? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the podium mic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're good? Boom again. Boom mic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You good? You good? Everything's good?
I still have some app on my computer. I don't want to see that thing. This is Ocho. And because I was told that's why they one number give yeah. The first time in like a month and a half, you guys stand by. All right, guys. It's coming up. Sit down. All right, guys. This is the only conference ever. Why? Photographs. You're not coming back? 15 minutes. No. You're still laughing. It's not a good joke, but you're going for it, and I'm all in for that. Listen, I'll take the last break. You get it. Okay. You got it. Yes? Yeah, he's nervous. Don't be nervous. You know it's nervous. No. That is the most Russian thing.
All right, good morning. Secretary General just concluded the informal leaders roundtable on climate change, on climate action. He will make a few remarks and then take a question. Sir.
Good morning, everybody. I convened this meeting with Prime Minister Johnson for a very simple reason. It is a wake-up call to instill a sense of urgency on the dire state of the climate process ahead of COP26. On Friday, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change issued a report on the national determined contributions, the commitments, of all parties to the Paris Agreement. Based on the present commitments of member states, the world is on a catastrophic pathway to 2.7 degrees of heating, instead of the 1.5 we all agree should be the limit. And science tells us indeed that anything above 1.5 degrees would be a disaster. To limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, we need a 45% cut in emissions by 2030, so we can reach carbon neutrality by mid-century. Instead, the commitments made until now by countries imply an increase of 16% in greenhouse gas emissions, not a decrease of 45%. An increase of 16% in greenhouse gas emissions in 2030 compared to 2010 levels. And this means that unless we collectively change course, there is a high risk of failure of COP26. So today I ask leaders to do what is needed to make sure COP26 is a success and that it marks a true turning point. On the way to COP26, the international community needs to deliver on three fronts. First, keeping the 1.5 degree goal within reach, and all the interventions today agreed that 1.5 degree is the limit we should respect. Second, delivering on the promised $100 billion a year for climate action in developing countries. And today, I was happy to see many countries recognizing that it is essential to transform this commitment into a reality. We'll see how it happens. And it is a matter of trust that it is absolutely essential to solve. On third, scaling up funding for adaptation to at least 50% of total public climate finance. We are not yet there, but today a few countries, namely Sweden and Denmark, have announced commitments of 50% or more. And I think that this idea that developing countries are already suffering so much that it's not enough to support them in reduction of emissions. It's necessary to support them in building resilience for their communities, for their infrastructure. I believe that this 50% might gain traction, but we are still not yet there. On mitigation, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that 1.5 degree goal is still in reach. But we need a dramatic improvement in national determined contributions from most countries. I understand the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. Developed countries need to take the lead. But it is also essential for several emerging economies to go the extra mile and to effectively contribute to emissions reductions. And we especially need leadership from all G20 members. They represent 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, and there was a consensus in the meeting today that the next G20 meeting will be absolutely essential to guarantee the success of the COP. The bottom line is that we need decisive action now around net zero commitments from all countries and the private sector. And I want to mention one specific challenge: energy. Governments must shift subsidies away from fossil fuels and progressively phase out coal use. If all planned coal power plants become operational, we will not only be clearly about 1.5 degrees, we will be well above 2 degrees. And the Paris targets would go up in smoke. OECD nations need to end coal use by 2030, developing nations need to follow suit by 2040, and we need coalitions of solidarity between countries that still depend heavily on coal and countries that have the financial and technical resources to support transitions, because it is essential that no more coal power plants are built. On finance, developed nations need to implement their promise to mobilize $100 billion a year for climate action in the developing world from 2021 to 2025. We failed in 2019 and 2020. OECD calculations say we are about $20 billion short, and failure to fulfill this pledge would be a major source of erosion of trust between developed and developing countries. Developed nations need to bridge this gap, and I was encouraged by what I heard today. Increased support from international financial institutions is also crucial. So is the mobilization of assistance from the private sector, both financial and technological. Many asset owners and managers and other financial institutions are now shifting their investments towards a decarbonized, sustainable, and resilient economy. But these private finance flows will not cover the immediate needs of the many countries that need support now or who cannot borrow money because of their debt burden. Again, developed nations need to step up. Finally, on adaptation, we are seeing, indeed, all countries increasingly vulnerable to climate disruption. But the developing world is the least able to adapt and build resilience. As I mentioned, it is very important to reach 50% of climate finance in adaptation. And I've been asking all donors and financiers to commit to that allocation. Overall, my message this morning and to the Conference of Parties in November is that we need decisive action now to avert climate catastrophe. And for that, we need solidarity. Saving these and future generations is a common responsibility. And I'm fully ready to support Prime Minister Johnson and his team in their constant efforts to bring the world back on track. And I thank you.
Michelle Nichols, Reuters.
Thank you, Secretary General. You said last week, and you've also mentioned it again today, that COP26 is at risk of failure. Did today's meeting change your opinion at all? And can you maybe tell us who specifically is not doing enough? And then just a second question on Australia, the US, France and the UK. They're having quite a spat at the moment over this new security partnership. Do you have a message for them?
Well, that security partnership has nothing to do with climate change and will not contribute to climate action. In relation to the questions that you have asked, there are several dimensions here. Will the developed world finally materialize the $100 billion of annual support to developing countries, and, if possible, more? We are not yet there, but today there were encouraging declarations in this regard. So this is an area where I'm hopeful we will be able to make serious progress in COP in Glasgow. I think there is a growing concern about adaptation, I'm not sure we will get there as strongly as I would like. Where I believe there is still a long way to go is in relation to the reduction of emissions. G20 countries represent 80% of the emissions. And of course, it would make no sense if the developed countries that are already committed to net zero in 2050 would say, well, we have done our job, now it's for developing countries, or especially emerging economies, to do so. Or for emerging economies to say, well, the developed countries have not yet provided 100 billion, and as they have polluted more in the past, it's for them to be the biggest effort for us to be able to still go on producing more emissions. I mean, these arguments are no longer valid. Everybody must do their job. Developed countries and emerging economies must be able to contribute, all of them, for the possibility of reaching net zero in 2050 and a very strong reduction of emissions in 2030. And we are not yet there. And I hope that the contexts that are being established by different countries, the US and China, but also with India, with Europe, and with different other key partners, will allow for all these countries to understand that they need to do the maximum without waiting for what the others are doing.
Thank you. The woman in red there, please, on climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. This is Camelia Intekhabi Fard, Chief Editor of the Independent Persian. My question is about Afghanistan. I would like to ask Secretary, talking about the humanitarian issue which has been considered and concentrated, is there any plan also to talk about the political crisis and about the children and the girls aged under 7 years old which are barred to go to school in Afghanistan? Thank you.
Well, our first responsibility as UN present in Afghanistan was, of course, to engage with the Taliban and to put up front a strong commitment for humanitarian aid. And I think it is exactly that commitment and the capacity to deliver on that that would give us leverage to be able also to have a positive influence in the matters that you have referred.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to the Turkish